Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity, the podcast that explores what it takes to be well in a busy world. With self-care strategies from Chinese medicine, functional medicine, Ayurveda, neuroscience, and beyond. I'm your host, Brody Welch, a licensed acupuncturist and transformation catalyst, here to support you on your journey of health, happiness, and personal evolution. Hello, and thank you for tuning in to A Healthy Curiosity today. There are 29 million podcast episodes you could be listening to on over 700,000 possible podcasts, and yet you're here tuning into this, so thank you. I do not take your attention for granted. I wanted to let you know that I have a couple of openings for coaching clients, both local and remotely. If you're looking for compassion and strategy to help you evolve into who you're becoming, if you'd like help being lovingly called out on your limiting beliefs, being offered smart strategy from my 2 decades of experience in the healing arts, head to brodywelch.com and apply. I'm also looking to do more teaching in the next year or so. A year ago, I was leading a retreat in Mexico, which was a total blast, and kind of wishing I was there right now. So if you would like to partner with me on bringing an inner alchemy class on any aspect of Chinese medicine, health, or personal evolution to where you live, hit me up at brody@brodywelch.com. That's Brody with an IE and Welch with a CH. And as always, I welcome your input as to what kind of conversations you'd like to hear on A Healthy Curiosity. So feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear what you're interested in and how I could support you, because that is the point of the show. And now on to today's interview. Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity. I'm your host, Brody Welch, a licensed acupuncturist and transformation catalyst. And my guest today is a fellow acupuncturist who has done considerable advanced training in fertility and intimacy. My guest today is Denise Wiesner, she is the author of Conceiving with Love, a whole body approach to creating intimacy, reigniting passion, and increasing fertility. The founder of the Natural Healing and Acupuncture Clinic in West Los Angeles, Wiesner is an internationally recognized traditional Chinese medicine practitioner specializing in the whole systems Chinese medicine approach to women's health, sexuality, and fertility. I'm super excited to have Denise joining me today for this conversation on all kinds of things that don't get talked about all that much with respect to fertility, sex, intimacy, and desire as we think about it through a Chinese medicine lens. A lot of women who I treat in my practice who are trying to get pregnant are going about it in an incredibly stressful way, almost like it's a part-time job, obsessed with ovulation predicting and having sex maybe when they don't want to, and kind of treating it in a very kind of mechanical way. So I'm excited to have, looking at Denise's book, Conceiving with Love, she really goes beyond the simple mechanics and maybe if-then equations that we might think of when thinking about conception. So with that, Denise, welcome to A Healthy Curiosity.
Thanks so much, Brody. I'm really excited to be here.
First off, I'd love to know what took you down this road of wanting to write this book in the first place.
I've been treating fertility. I've been in practice for 25 years, I think going on 26. And I've been working with a lot of fertility patients. And I've noticed this common theme where women come in and they know all about diet, or they want to know about diet and exercise and what to do and what to take. But when you start digging deeper into their fertility issues, a lot of it is that they're not even actually having intercourse at the right time, or they're not having intercourse at all. It's become such a stressful event that the whole connection and the reason they wanted to make a baby in the first place is sort of lacking in the mix. Not for everyone, but it's just a really trying to make a baby. If you're having a difficulty, it can be very stress producing. And as you were mentioning earlier, it becomes mechanical, and people just, it really kind of puts a sort of a darkness over the relationship. So I felt there was a need to write a book.
And I'm so glad you did, because yes, in addition to that stress of people feeling, people can go through all kinds of wondering what's wrong with them and guilt and shame, as well as the mystery and the frustration that why isn't this happening? I seem to be doing everything right, and what's happening. And
Mhm.
a lot of times as practitioners in Chinese medicine, we have to bring people into our view of looking at the body, where it's not, health is not this binary, I'm either healthy or I'm not healthy, but that there's this whole zone of imbalance in between those things. And that when we can see an imbalance through the lens of Chinese medicine, imbalances that might have labels like liver qi stagnation or kidney yin deficiency or spleen qi deficiency, dampness, or whatever it is that these labels are that we put on there, it can be useful to know that there's a whole set of symptoms and experiences that someone might be having that we see as connected to their overall health, and which is sometimes quite empowering. And it's like, oh, it's not this mystery of like of like this unexplained infertility diagnosis or something like that, that there is actually a way that we can look at the body in a holistic way with an eye to the result that people are wanting. And so then it becomes, we can start to see progress towards that eventual goal of having a baby, as opposed to, which I think can be really helpful for people. I'm curious, like what are the mindset shifts that you invite women into when you start working with them on fertility?
A lot of my women, I would say probably 98% of them really are anxious and have a lot of stress, maybe a lot of trauma from the past and a lot of trauma of repeated miscarriages or not getting pregnant and they feel like failures. And so oftentimes are going to work with balancing their elements for sure. There are five elements, the earth, the wood, the water, metal, right? And I'm missing one, right? Fire. And I feel like my job is to really take them to the deeper levels of what really making a baby's about, which is about heart opening, really. It's about, in Chinese medicine, this connection between the heart, loving, spiritual, the mind, and the reproductive organs. That actually, when we disconnect that energy, we're not as fertile. So bringing them back into the heart, bringing them back into love energy, and it sounds really simplistic, right? I mean, I'm really happy when they eat well. Like I do that. I do herbs to treat their imbalance, all those things. And then really helping them look at the sort of bigger picture of what it means to conceive a healthy baby. It's not like must have a baby at all costs. People get so like worked up when their IVF doesn't work. And sometimes it's just not meant to be. So it's really changing the outlook to finding the sort of middle way, the balanced approach, right? Very similar to Taoist philosophy. And people are really grateful just to be heard where they're at and to not also push away where they're at. So it's like also just, helping them to become aware of where they're at. Sometimes people are like, oh my gosh, I can't think bad thoughts, or I can't be scared, or I can't, but, like the Chinese believe, right? You feel your emotions and then you let them go. And some of my patients are really afraid to feel.
It's a really important point. I think that, especially that people getting caught up in the shoulds, that becomes this long to-do list of how they need to be living their lives, that it can actually be counterproductive because they're disconnected from what's actually happening in their bodies and minds and hearts.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a lot of shoulds and a lot of feel. You said it earlier, but a lot of women feel like failures. I mean, I saw a patient yesterday who felt like she was a failure as a woman if she couldn't provide this baby for to her partner. And, that's a really horrible place to be. That's not a fertile place, you know? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so for people who are listening who might think, well, does it really matter what your mindset, or the state of, like, so does it matter if you think of yourself as a failure? Like, what does that have to do with getting pregnant?
That's a great question because, really truthfully, you can just, sort of take out your eggs and fertilize them in a petri dish and make a baby, I mean, it happens. But really to be really fertile is a mindset, it's mind and body, it's the whole thing, right? So when we're scared and we're under the stress response, let's call it, when we're sympathetically dominant, right? Fight or flight, freeze mode, what happens is the blood flow doesn't go to our reproductive organs, right? So we might not really feel like having intercourse because, we might not lubricate because we're like anxious. When we're running from a bear, we're not like trying to have a baby because it's not safe. That's kind of in our DNA. So the idea is that that we're all very connected, so that our mindset can also influence how our blood flow to our reproductive organs is going, which is what nourishes the eggs and also the sperm.
Yeah, absolutely. And blood flow. And of course, the body's always going to prioritize safety over reproduction because we wouldn't last too long as a species if we didn't do that. So
Totally.
we are hardwired to prioritize the stress hormones getting the juice, so to speak. And that leaves less left over for fertility. So it just helping people get out of that mission driven, anxious space about the process of conception itself is I think one of the acupuncture superpowers because when you're in an acupuncture session, you're necessarily moving into that parasympathetic state where healing happens.
Totally. I think we have such a great thing. The acupuncture is very, very helpful. And it's sort of like having a safe place to talk. I know if you go to a OBGYN, I've been finding, or if they go to their fertility doctor, and I'm all a fan of all these people,
Yeah.
but they don't really talk to you about like what's going on with your intimate relationship, what's going on with your feelings, because they just, are really focused on ovaries and uterus and making sure all that's working properly. So, what gets left out of the equation, I feel a lot, is sort of like what's happening with your feelings, what's happening with your body, and what's happening with your relationship. How's that feeding your fertility?
I think that's such an important point, right? Because it's not just like I mean, we've been talking about women, but they're half of the equation, like that, and
Right.
the relationship that a woman who's trying to get pregnant has, or a person, I guess, who's trying to get pregnant has with their partner is is another major factor. So in your book, you do dive into ways that people can relate better in a more intimate way. And I'm wondering what are some of your go-to pieces of advice for people for whom let's say that a couple that are trying to get pregnant and it's starting to become stressful. What's your typical where do you start with people?
I try to start really simply because, doing fertility, if people are doing like an IVF or going for fertility help, it's really stressful. There's all these things you have to show up for. It's like you have to maybe give yourself a shot, or even if you're trying to get pregnant, there's like temperature taking. And if you're ovulating, there's like so much to do, right? So I try to boil it down to simple things that people can do. One is like creating a space, just having a place where we it's like the love sanctuary, where you make your bedroom or wherever it's going to be into this beautiful space. And it can be very simple. It's like, lighting candles, listening to music, creating, putting fresh flowers in your room, just changing up the energy to make it a special place. When you go on vacation and the room's really beautiful and you're like, wow, just creating your own, making your own room like that. So that's one. And then I also invite people to spend more time together. So it's not all about this sort of like, okay, honey, I'm ovulating tonight. Okay, we, date 5 o'clock, have sex or whatever. 9 o'clock, let's have sex. It's more this invitation to spend intimate moments together, looking at each other in the eyes, spending time doing touching. In Conceiving with Love, the book, I have like all these touching exercises for men and women to do because sometimes they forget to not touch each other just for sensuality. Bring sensuality back into the relationship. Touching, smelling, using essential oils, right? All those tasting and really delighting in that and not just getting like we have to have, sperm in the vagina ASAP.
Yeah, so such a different environment than yeah, the sort of almost medical or clinical bedroom versus the like let's hang out and be together and connect and that it's really different. And in your book you get into some pretty specific exercises and I'm wondering like is there one that you could describe for people?
I think ones that, because we're doing Chinese medicine here, the microcosmic orbit breath, where couples can do it together, but even just doing it on your own, where you really breathe into, and because we're talking reproduction, it's like bringing the energy into the reproductive energy. It's like breathing up through them, as opposed to like, breathing through your mouth and down, but like breathing up like sometimes doing a little bit of Kegels if you know what those are, like kind of like Mula Bandha, squeezing the perineum, and there's information on how to do a Kegel, but it's like kind of doing some pulsing energy in your vagina if you're a guy or a woman, or if you're your penis, the same thing, and then using that energy and bringing it up the spine and then down inhaling up the spine and exhaling down the front channel of the body, right? And making that circle of energy kind of can enliven our sensuality, our energy down in our reproductive organs. So, and then in my book, I talk about how to exchange that with your partner, which probably is, more more complicated to describe, but it's this really amazing exchange of energy. And we're not even having intercourse, we're just exchanging energy with our partner where we can really feel them and take them in. And that doesn't happen a lot of the times. People just sort of shut their eyes and have sex or whatever they do, but really don't connect, right? They try to connect, but they don't really see their partner or take them in. So this breathing practice helps bring more energy to the reproductive organs, and it also helps connect partners together.
It really is. I mean, first of all, just shifting out of the belief that we are solely these physical beings, but that we're also these energetic beings. And so being able to be in touch with the energy centers in the body and connecting that with the breath, is essentially the practice that you're describing, the microcosmic orbit, where you're connecting your mind to your breath, but then also to your partner, right? So making it kind of like a partner yoga exercise, except with your energy body is how I would describe it. And it really can be quite profoundly intimate.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've done work with partners aren't even my not even my partner, and you can really feel the energy move, how we're so very, very connected with our energy bodies.
And I can almost hear the objections of like, what is like, maybe if you're like some sort of advanced yoga practitioner, but like for the average person, is this something that they can really do?
I teach it to my patients
Mhm.
and who don't have any, some of them don't even do yoga or any type of practice. And yeah, it's really I've seen people have really profound experiences. Sometimes because I do a lot of coaching and intimacy coaching, I'll have patients in a room. I'll just put them together and give them some practices to do. Sometimes it's just like, and this is clothing on, right?
Mhm.
Just having them touch each other and ask for what they want. This is like a really interesting thing where couples don't talk about what they want in the sensuality department. I mean, I just had a couple patients that I put them in a room and I gave them exercises. One is touching exercises and told them in like 3 minutes to tell their partner what they liked or what they didn't like. I know what they liked, like, oh, touch me here, touch me over here. And I mean, they found out things about each other that they didn't even know because everybody's afraid to ask for what they want. Like, like some man liked his nipple squeezed and he just never told his partner that until she was touching him. Yeah. So,
Really, really, it's such an important exercise. Like people talk about creating a safe space, and it's like just deciding, okay, this is the container. We're going to be super honest here. It's not personal. It's just information, and being able to
yeah.
share that.
And asking for what you want. Being like, I really love my hair stroked. I'd love if you just kind of took your hands and put them through my hair. I'd love if you lightly touched, my face. I mean, that's intimate. That's intimacy, or you know what I mean? Where maybe a partner didn't know and didn't know to ask. And we just assume like if the partner likes to touch us this way, that it gives them pleasure, so we don't say anything. So that's an important thing is teaching couples how to touch and how to converse about it.
It's so important that just finding the right words, especially in a society where women are socialized to please men. If one is in a heterosexual relationship, this might extend to the bedroom.
I think I talk a lot, and we had spoken earlier about like the earth type. The because I have this wheel, lover's wheel that I created with the 5 elements that helps you identify like where you're on the wheel, like maybe in terms of the sexuality and intimacy. So earth types of women or even men are people pleasers. Like we really want to please, and sometimes we have difficulty asking for what we want. And that's like so typical Earth mom, right? Take care of everyone else, but forget to take care of ourselves.
That certainly sounds familiar. Do you want to walk us around the wheel? I think it's such an innovative way of thinking about it.
Yeah, sure. Well, I like to start with the Earth because the Earth is the center, right? And in Taoist, I even have the Taoist wheel where Earth is at the center.
Earth is
And
truly in the center. So for
right.
people who want to imagine this, basically, just think of a plus sign. So we have, each of the cardinal directions with Earth in the middle, and Earth is in the middle because it integrates. It integrates all of the other elements, and it provides. Also the Earth element corresponds with the spleen and stomach, the digestive system in Chinese medicine, which is our source of nourishment. It's about transforming the world into usable nutrients and taking, making non-self become self in a positive way. And so it's our digestive system. It's also our compassion. It's also things like on a mental level, it's mental attention, which in excess can look like worry. And the taste is sweet. So in earth element, like too much of that sweetness, too much of that being sweet to other people with maybe like self neglect involved. It's like that's a common earth element imbalance that we see.
Right. No, so that really, thank you. That describes it really well. So, in terms of, it's working with people, right? If your digestion's not doing well, right, that's not going to lead to wanting to be intimate with your partner. If you're like gassy and bloated or you're constipated, right? So,
Not
that's
super sexy feeling,
not,
right?
yeah, not, you don't feel sexy and like you're not really, or I'm going to extend what you just said in the earth element are people, especially women, and I've seen it in men too, where we're really self conscious about our body,
Oh,
not
so
wanting
much body shame out
right?
there.
Body shame, not wanting to be touched in a certain way because we feel like fat or I don't really like our stomach touch or, we're just not embodied in our body. So in the earth element in the lover's wheel, it's really like attending to our body. So like, yeah, eating well, taking care of ourselves, but also loving ourselves, loving our body, our physical body, because you said it so nicely, like the earth element is like over worry and over concerned. So the earth element people think so much, they don't embody their body. So in lovemaking, if you're thinking like, oh, I got to have an orgasm, or does he like the way I look, or you're not in the moment. Lovemaking is this beautiful experience, especially baby making or just all lovemaking. It's this beautiful exchange of energy where we take our brain offline. We just experience pleasure. And a lot of people have a difficulty in doing this. So that's really the earth element, right? Is to to ask for what you want, to feel good in your body, and all the things that you talked about. Attend to the center.
And so let's move around the wheel a little bit. Where should we go
Yeah.
next?
Let's go. Let's go to the middle.
Okay.
I think metal is really important. It's the lung and large intestine, and it's about, how we take in the world through our breath and also how we protect ourselves. So lung is, yeah, how the barrier between the outside world and the inside world, right? And a lot of people in this vein, I like to call it they armor themselves. Maybe they've been hurt in the past, or maybe they've had a lot of miscarriages and they've like really have a lot of grief, because grief is the emotion of the metal element, right? The metal element is about how we protect ourselves. So maybe we don't let somebody in because again we had some trauma in the past that we haven't really let go of in our body. So letting go is the emotion. Also letting go is one of the things we need to do with the metal element, and letting the armor go, letting our beloved in, which might mean having to deal with some unresolved trauma in our lives.
Absolutely. So that taking in and letting go, that is the breath for the lungs, and the letting go, obviously, of the excrements that we no longer need from the large intestine, but
Right.
also taking in love, taking in what's energizing and nourishing, and letting go of the past, letting go of what no longer serves, which can sound like a lot of words. Can we maybe throw like make this a little bit more concrete for people as to how this happens?
I think acupuncture is such a good, any type of trauma therapy
Mhm.
is a great way for people to kind of discover perhaps what they need to let go of. Sometimes it's doing a practice like a ceremony practice. Like, let's say you've had a ton of miscarriages and you feel a lot of grief because you just can't seem to conceive, and it really is traumatic for sure, right? And there's nothing out there that it's hard sometimes for people to have a lot of empathy for miscarriages. It's kind of a secretive thing that women seem to carry. Like they don't. It's
It can be really lonely.
yeah, lonely. So I feel like doing a ceremony alone or with your partner, like perhaps I like planting a tree, something that will grow and take root. Yeah. Is in honor of this life that didn't make it, is a positive way to, do a little ceremony. Like we send a little prayer maybe for the new growth, and, breathe it on its way.
And that power of ritual, a lot of times it creates a space to allow that which has been unexpressed to be expressed, when we cry, we're it's a form of letting go. And a lot of times when energy or emotions are just energy, right? So when they're stuck in the body, it can just be, it's like you can't necessarily force yourself to like emotionally part with something, but there's rituals can be so powerful in terms of like helping us tune into anything that might still be with us, and creating an intentional space for that letting go. That's
Yeah,
great.
so it's coming up with your own ritual that kind of,
Mhm.
I had one of the patients, and I wrote this in my book, where there's this, what are they? They're like these lanterns, this lantern festival where like everybody goes to the desert, and these like lantern, they all light lanterns and send them on their way to the sky. Like all these lanterns light up the sky. It's like a huge ritual. And in that ritual, she let go of her miscarriage because, she put it up in the lantern and away it went. And so those, with everyone else. So very, very powerful, in order to move on to the next. So that's really much, that's kind of, and then, using breath exchange with partners, right? Taking in their breath, inhaling their breath sounds really funny, but, taking them in with the breath, which is the metal element as well. And
Such an intimate thing to just synchronize breath like that, and I mean, that's really, there is no separation energetically when,
yeah, very, very powerful.
absolutely. So let's move around the wheel to the water element.
The water element is really, when I talk about, it's the kidneys, right, and the bladder. And when we talk about the kidneys or the water element, we're really talking about our reproductive function and our sexuality, the deepest part of our being. And this is also the adrenal glands, where we talk about that fight, flight, freeze response. And so in when I talk about water, it's about nourishing the reproductive organs and our sexuality. It's feeling our sexual selves, which, when you're feeling fear, which is the emotion when it's not balanced of the water element, it's hard to feel that way. So, in working with the water element, it's about nourishing, maybe with herbs, acupuncture, breathing practices, meditation, getting to be in the trust factor of life, and also taking care of your putting energy in our sexuality and reproductive organs.
So much of that, I find, comes with slowing down.
Yes,
Because like the kidneys being this, they house our special reserve energy that we call Jing, which is our reproductive essence. And so when we're dipping into our reserves all the time, when we're kind of chronically doing too much, moving too fast, and maybe exceeding, like doing more than we can really put back on an everyday basis, we dip into the water element and we deplete it. And so, just a lot of times for women, it's like giving them permission to do less than they're humanly capable of, so that there's
right.
a little bit more for this idea of conception. It can be really powerful medicine.
Yeah, it's like people who over exercise, right? It's people who are doing so much, and they're just, all their energy is going there, so nothing's left over for like intimacy because they're wiped out by the end of the day. Or people who overwork. Yeah, it's
Exactly.
exactly what you said.
So, and that can be similar to what we find in the wood element, where people, there's a lot of driving and striving that goes on in the wood element, and so sometimes that can lead to people, obviously people being in a state of chronic stress. What else do we see on this wheel?
So the wood element is, right, moving along. The wood element is actually the visionary, right? It's really the general in its positive sense, where it's like the vision of what might happen in our future. Even though we want to stay present into the now, it is nice sometimes to have a vision, right? And so the wood element gives us that. But what happens with most people, I would say, like, I'm in there sometimes, where that energy gets stuck. We feel stagnant. It's like people who have very bad PMS, the energy isn't moving, it gets stuck. And if our energy is stuck, it's not going to the reproductive organs. We can't access it. We feel like we're sighing, we're frustrated, we're angry, and we can't, if we're frustrated and angry or mad at our partner, it's hard to connect, right? If we're holding a lot of old resentment that we haven't expressed. So the wood energy in its finest is about moving energy. It's about, it's about our passion. It's about fantasy, really. The wood element is, yeah, I talk about passion and yeah, and fantasy, and sharing those with your partner, and really trying to not be stuck and frustrated, right? I mean, people have sexual frustration because some partners, especially conceiving, like women just want to have sex when they're ovulating, or men can't have an erection during that time because they're so stressed out, and women get, it's a woody wood element, and women get really frustrated with that. So it's dealing with all that, and that's really the wood element.
Yeah, especially important when women are dealing with irregular periods or painful periods, like what is in charge of timing and is in charge of the free flow of energy in the body. So that a really important one to look at when we're treating gynecological things, including fertility in Chinese medicine.
Absolutely.
And then lastly, we find ourselves in fire.
Fire, Chinese medicine, to me, the fire element, obviously if you're too fiery and you're not sleeping at night, it's not a good thing, right? That's imbalanced fire. But I really like to talk about the fire element as being really the heart, the pericardium, the heart protector. But for me, the heart really is spectacular because it's about love. It's about the heart is amazing anyway. And in Western medicine, they find the force field of the heart like extends very much outside of the body. It's not just we can
Right, it's this
right.
powerful center of this electromagnetic field that is the human. What is it? The electromagnetic. What do they
Yeah,
call that? The
the
biosphere, not the
the
biosphere.
the
The
the, the, the field, the electromagnetic
yeah,
field of the
exactly.
heart, and we can measure that, and it's amazing. So the heart is about love, and it's in Chinese medicine we also talk about the heart as the mind. But if we talk about the heart as a mind, I think about like the pituitary and the hypothalamus, which take in the hypothalamus takes in the environment, to say, is it safe? Is there a loving atmosphere where I can make a baby? And it really is about love. Everything's about love, really. I mean, why we want to make a baby is because of love. We want to love a baby and that sort of amazing energy that exchange with a baby and watching them grow if you're a parent, and then love with our partner, you know and it goes even further because I deal with same-sex couples and single women, and just the love. Sometimes I'll take that heart energy and just say, it's about self-love, dropping that love into self first to make a
So
baby.
so critical. And really, if we want to go a little bit Chinese medicine metaphysical about it, that the heart mind, as it's often translated, it's the sort of the seat of the consciousness. And when the consciousness can recognize the essence, right, that heart and kidneys are in
Hmm.
dialogue, that and the kidneys is that really like, what do you want to give birth to, what do you want to create, right? So even in kind of a metaphysical realm, this idea of like, what is your purpose or your destiny, or and certainly in creating the opportunity for a shen, a consciousness of a soul that might want to come into the world, at the same time looking for that material basis, right, the
Hmm.
jing, that is the sperm and the egg that can make that happen. It's like that. It's a little in micro, that somebody's internal heart kidney relationship is like the macro of conception itself.
Yeah, that's so beautifully said. I totally agree. And I was just thinking when you were talking about this idea and just like something where couples can do, and it's really profound, but and like face each other and take your hand and like your left hand and put it on your between your nipples of your partner, like in their chest where their heart, and have them do the same, their left hand do the same to you, and breathe together and look each other in the eyes. And that is so spectacular in connecting heart. I mean, with the Shen, with through the eyes and the heart energies. I mean, you can really feel the connection of heart energies together.
And it seems like if you're in that space, then the outcome of any particular attempt to conceive may become less important, because you're deepening this intimacy and strengthening the relationship that you currently have, as opposed to focusing on the lack, or like, or the thing that isn't quite here yet.
Right. What's interesting too is like I didn't want to believe it at first, and it's so cliche, but many of my patients are like, when they've let go, they're like they go on vacation. And it's really awful to say. And it's not that I think, oh yeah, just go on vacation, then you'll conceive. There's a lot of times women have issues and they do need some help. But the idea of what happens on vacation, we get relaxed, we connect with our partner, we might have intercourse more often. It's not that like pressure now we might spend time hanging out with our partner more often too, and there's something in that we want to bring into our lives that can help us conceive, so it's not just like a business of conception.
Really, really important to remember. And for people out there who might not necessarily understand how powerful acupuncture can be in this process, would you mind visiting just that on a basis of like, why might someone who is trying to conceive consider going to an acupuncturist?
The acupuncturist deals with the whole being, all the different parts. We address some of the elements today, but it really looks at your body as a whole and uses this ancient tools of moving energy that can help you access the places in your body that are stuck. I mean, I've had patients have profound healings on the table where all of a sudden, they something that they viewed one way, they saw it another way because it allows the system to go into a very deep relaxation and the energy to like sort of realign, if you will. And there's a lot of studies, even just in a Western viewpoint, saying that it helps light up parts of the brain that have to do with the needles. They did functional MRIs and we see that parts of the brain light up when we stimulate the body. And then we also see it deals with not only the brain, but also deals with the sympathetic nervous system. So it helps relax the sympathetic nervous system and getting out of that fight, flight, freeze response and into more love-making response.
Absolutely. And there is plenty of data and research that says that acupuncture can benefit people who are trying to conceive, people who are going through IVF or any of that. That acupuncture is increasingly becoming an important part of that process to help increase outcomes.
Yeah, and for even women, I see a lot of women, I'm sure you do too, with like polycystic ovarian syndrome. I get patients to have regular cycles or endometriosis, in
Yes.
addition. I mean, there's so many powerful tools, acupuncture, herbs, supplements, nutrition, advice, exercise, not only the needles, but we can really help work on the whole person with all these different wonderful tools.
Yeah, and as you were saying before, just creating a space for people to connect to themselves and to look at themselves in a new way is such a gift to people. The book is Conceiving with Love by Denise Wiesner. And Denise, if someone is out there listening and is interested in connecting with you further, where should they go?
I have a website, which is my name, denisewiesner.com. And I also have, Instagram's a great place. It's Denise Wiesner, L.A.C. And I post a lot of things and information there as well. Those are two good places.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us today
Oh,
and
this was
having
so
this
wonderful.
conversation. Such
Yeah.
a pleasure to connect with another Chinese medicine expert who is really making a difference in the world and trying to educate people into what they can do beyond the conventional advice. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been delightful.
Thanks for listening today. To check out the show notes, get on my email list, or drop me a line, head to brodywelch.com. That's Brody with an IE and Welch with a CH. I'd love to hear from you. If you learned something new or feel inspired to try something different in your life, I'd love for you to pay it forward by sharing this episode with a friend who you think could also benefit and give them a reason to listen. You'll be helping to create a world where we encourage each other to embody self-respect. Till next time, be good to yourself.